Stephanie emailed me with a serious problem. She's selling her home and is buying another home. The buyer for the house that she's selling hired an inspector, Brad Lawler,
Mm.
and the repair request she received and the supporting inspection documentation was a joke, says Stephanie. There was no understanding what the inspector felt needed to be fixed. There were multiple problems clumped together. So Stephanie and her agent were unable to determine what was really needed. Now, just days before closing, the buyer is saying he's not happy with the repairs that were done, and several were overlooked. What can she do? And we're going to both go to Brad for his interpretation of this and also to Chuck Crosby for the legal end of this. But here we've got an inspection report that Stephanie and maybe her agents say were inferior. Brad?
Well, one of the things that we tell everybody before you hire an inspector, and of course, this is on the seller side, so I understand I'm addressing the other part of it first, but for buyers or for a seller doing a pre-listing inspection before they put their home on the market, make sure you look at your inspector's sample report. Most of us, if we have websites, we've got them online. If they don't have a website, get a copy, ask them for a copy of the sample report because if the sample report doesn't make any sense to you, then you're wasting your money, because it's the only thing a home inspector is required to deliver as our standards of practice is a written report. So you got to be able to understand the written report. Beyond that, home inspectors, our standards of practice, we follow one of two types, either the ASHI standards, like my company does, or the InterNACHI standards. They're practically identical. They just have different companies, different entities overseeing them. But at the end of the day, we're all looking for what are called material defects, those defects that cost more than $1,000 to repair. Or we are also looking for safety defects. So I don't know exactly what was written up for Stephanie. I don't know what was presented, but the home inspectors work for the buyer in Stephanie's case. And so the home inspector provides a report to the agent and to the buyer, and then it's the agent and the buyer then who determine what items they want fixed, funded, replaced, or they just ignore them. A lot of things I'm sure that we present from Home Team to our buyers, the agents probably advise them, no, we're not going to, use that as part of the negotiating tools, but it may be a maintenance item that the buyer, deals with later on. So I'm not really privy to the repair request list side. Our tools allow the agent to build it within our app, but beyond what's actually presented to the other side, Bob, I wouldn't know exactly what, was delivered.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I've seen inspection requests and repair requests and reports that match this type of a problem. And I would tell you, as a seller's representative, as an agent for a seller, there's no harm in going back to the buyer's agent and saying, look, this is going to have to go back and redo this. You're going to need to either get the inspector to be more specific, or you and your repair request need to rewrite it so you have specifics that my seller can address one way or another, but we can't leave these out in the atmosphere there being vague, because it will exactly do what's happened here for poor Stephanie, and that is she is really up a creek without a paddle, so to speak. So Chuck, that takes us to the legal side of this.
Well, you just ran through mine. I was going to say
Oh,
pro tip is jump on it when you first get it. Say,
yeah.
hey, I don't understand this, and then send it back because a contract is a memorialization of what you agree to. And if there's no meeting on the minds as to what you agree to, then you don't really have a contract, and that's where ambiguity is going to come into play. Because if they don't have that meeting of the minds, then there was no agreement whatsoever. Now, there's practical problems, obviously, that arise. Seller needs to sell and buyer needs to buy. So right now they're in the unenviable position of having to renegotiate. I don't, if they really did not understand the terms, should have done it at first, but well, now it's time to do it, or everybody can uh, cut bait and move on.
Yeah, where I'm going, what I would tell you is go back and let the buyer speak to the vendors who did the repairs.
Yeah.
So they've got some professional ideas of what needs to be done or hasn't been done. But Chuck, in just a couple of lines, what happens if there is no meeting of the mind legally? Where
Then there's no
does this go?
contract.
There is no contract. Does
Yeah.
do the sellers have any recourse saying they've done the work as per what they interpreted from the inspection repair
If there's
request?
no meeting of minds, then there was no addendum as to repairs. Okay. The problem's going to be you've got one guy saying, "Oh yeah, you understood perfectly. Otherwise, you'd have said you didn't understand, and you didn't do it." So that's where the one side's going to come at. The other side's going to come at him and say, "No, what you gave me was a vague list of things, and we've repaired everything.
Yeah.
Now you're at a standstill."
Yeah. Better to get all sides together and discuss this with a calm, reasonable expectations.
I mean,
So
there's always a way around this, right?
right.
What is it exactly that's being discussed? If it's something substantial and, substantial isn't from a legal perspective defined by a dollar amount. But if something is substantial, then that can kill a deal. If it's not substantial, well, you've got an argument to keep the deal alive. But as I always say, if you end up in front of a judge, you've already lost.
Let me ask you this. So what if this is just an attempt from the buyer's side who's getting cold feet, who wants to pull out of
And
the
wants
deal?
to bail. I've seen that done, where you throw something out there so vague that it's there's no way to perform.
And is there any recourse from the seller side at that point?
Not really, because we've already set the baseline that it was vague and ambiguous. And if it's vague and ambiguous, are you really going to go after them?